They say a mother's love is unbreakable, but what happens when it bends in ways you never expected? I'm Anna, 50 years old, and I've always believed life is about reinvention. At an age when most women slow down, I'm thriving. My days are filled with the hum of clippers, the scent of hair products, and the laughter of my clients, mostly young men and women who flock to my salon because I'm not your typical middle-aged hairdresser. I dress sharp, with bold colors and tailored fits that make me look a decade younger. My clients tell me I'm goals, and I soak it up. Their admiration fuels me, keeps me vibrant. But the one person whose attention means the most, my 23-year-old son, Ethan. Ethan's been living with us since he graduated college last year. He's figuring out his next steps, and I'm happy to have him home. My husband, David, is 64 and retired, spending his days tinkering in the garden or reading history books. He's content, but we've settled into a quiet routine. David's love is steady, predictable. Ethan, though, he's a burst of energy, always noticing the little things, like when I wear a new outfit or try a bold lipstick. "Mom, you're killing it," he'll say with that crooked smile, and my heart swells. It's innocent, I tell myself. Just a son appreciating his mom. Our house is a cozy haven, a 2-story with a sprawling backyard where David built a sauna years ago. It's my sanctuary. Every Saturday, I light the cedarwood, let the steam wrap around me, and wash away the week. It's my ritual, my escape. Ethan knows this, and he's always respected it, never interrupting. Until one Saturday when everything changed. Let me back up. Ethan and I have always been close. When he was little, he'd cling to me, his small hand in mine, asking a million questions about the world. As a teenager, he'd roll his eyes at my attempts to be cool, but he'd still confide in me about school, friends, even girls. Now, at 23, he's grown into a man, tall with David's jawline and my hazel eyes. He's thoughtful, charming, and yes, I'll admit, handsome. I see the way my clients sneak glances at him when he stops by the salon. It makes me proud, but there's something else too. A flicker of something I can't quite name. Lately, Ethan's been more attentive. He'll bring me coffee in the morning, compliment my latest hairstyle, or linger in the kitchen while I cook, asking about my day. "You're like a rock star, Mom," he said once, leaning against the counter, his eyes bright. I laughed it off, but the warmth in my chest lingered. David's compliments are rare these days, and when they come, they feel perfunctory. Ethan's words, though, they land differently. They make me feel seen. That Saturday morning, I was prepping for my sauna ritual. The house was quiet. David was out at the hardware store, and Ethan was nowhere in sight. I slipped into my robe, grabbed a towel, and headed to the backyard. The sauna was already warm, the air thick with cedar. I settled onto the bench, letting the heat seep into my bones. My mind wandered, as it often did, to Ethan. I thought about how he'd grown into someone I not only loved but admired. He was carving his own path, and I felt a strange pride in being part of it. Then the door creaked open. "Mom!" Ethan's voice was soft, almost hesitant. I startled, pulling my towel tighter. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" My heart raced, not from fear but from surprise. He stood in the doorway, wearing a towel around his waist, his hair slightly mussed. "I thought maybe I could join you," he said, his voice low. "Is that okay?" Froze. This was my space, my ritual. But the look in his eyes, earnest, almost vulnerable, caught me off guard. "Sure," I heard myself say, though my voice sounded distant. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The air felt heavier, not just from the steam. We sat in silence at first, the heat wrapping around us. I kept my eyes on the wooden slats, hyper-aware of his presence across from me. "This is nice," he said after a while, his voice breaking the quiet. "I've always wondered what your sauna time was like." I smiled, trying to keep things light. "It's my reset button," I said. "Keeps me sane." He chuckled, and the sound eased the tension. We started talking about his job search, my clients, the little things that filled our days. Felt normal, comfortable. But there was an undercurrent, something unspoken. Every time our eyes met, I felt a jolt, like a spark I couldn't ignore. I told myself it was just the heat, the intimacy of the moment. Mothers and sons share moments like this, don't they? As the conversation flowed, Ethan shifted closer. Not much, just enough for me to notice. "You're different, Mom," he said, his tone thoughtful. "Most people your age, they just settle. But you're out there living." His words hit me hard, stirring something deep. I wanted to brush it off, to laugh and change the subject, But instead I found myself saying, I don't feel 50. Not when I'm with you. The words hung in the air, heavier than the steam. His eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, the world outside the sauna didn't exist. My heart pounded, and I felt a rush of something I hadn't felt in years. Excitement, maybe, or something more dangerous. I broke the gaze, standing abruptly. We should probably head out, I said, my voice too bright. Don't want to overdo it. He nodded, but his expression was unreadable. We left the sauna, the cool air a shock against my skin. Back in the house, I busied myself with chores, trying to shake the feeling that something had shifted. Ethan was his usual self the rest of the day. Playful, attentive, but I couldn't stop replaying that moment in the sauna. The way he'd looked at me. The way I'd felt. That night, as I lay in bed next to David's steady snores, my mind raced. I told myself it was nothing. Just a mother and son sharing a moment. But deep down I knew it was more. Not because of what happened, but because of what I wanted to happen. And that scared me more than anything. The next morning, Ethan greeted me with his usual grin, handing me a mug of coffee. You okay, Mom? He asked. His tone casual but his eyes searching. I nodded, forcing a smile. Just didn't sleep great, I lied. He didn't push, but I felt his gaze linger as I turned away. Life went on. I threw myself into work, joking with my clients, keeping up the image of the vibrant, youthful Anna. But every interaction with Ethan felt charged now, like a wire humming with electricity. He didn't bring up the sauna, and neither did I. Yet I couldn't stop thinking about it, about him, about us. I started noticing things I hadn't before. The way he'd brush past me in the kitchen. His hand grazing my arm. The way he'd linger when we hugged. Just a second longer than necessary. I told myself I was imagining it, projecting my own confusion onto him. But the truth was I wasn't sure. And that uncertainty was both thrilling and terrifying. As the weeks passed, I found myself craving his attention more, seeking out moments to be alone with him. I'd suggest movie nights, knowing David would fall asleep halfway through. I'd ask for his help with small tasks, just to hear his voice, to feel that spark. It was innocent, I told myself. Just a mother bonding with her son. But deep down I knew I was lying. The sauna became a symbol of that day, a place I both avoided and longed for. I kept up my Saturday ritual, but now, every time I stepped inside, I half expected Ethan to appear. Part of me hoped he would. Part of me prayed he wouldn't. What was happening to me? To us? I didn't have answers, only questions that grew louder with each passing day. And as I stood on the edge of something I couldn't name, I wondered, where would this lead? And would I be strong enough to stop it? The weeks after that sauna moment were a blur of normalcy laced with something else. I threw myself into my routine, cutting hair, joking with clients, keeping up the image of the vibrant, youthful Anna. My salon was my stage, and I played the part perfectly. You're like a superhero, Anna, one of my regulars, a 20-something with a neon streak in her hair, said one day. I laughed, tossing my head back, but my mind was elsewhere. It was on Ethan. He was still living with us, still figuring out his next steps after college. David, my 64-year-old husband, was content in his retirement, pottering around the garden or lost in his books. Our marriage was comfortable, like a worn-in pair of shoes. But Ethan. He was a spark, a jolt of electricity in my otherwise predictable days. His compliments, his attention, they'd always been there, but now they felt different. Or maybe I was the one who'd changed. I started noticing everything about him. The way his laugh filled the room, deep and unguarded. The way his hazel eyes, my eyes, lit up when he talked about his dreams. The way he'd linger in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, watching me chop vegetables or stir a pot. You make it look easy, Mom, he'd say, and I'd feel a flush of warmth, not just from the stove. I told myself it was pride, nothing more. But the truth was harder to swallow. I tried to keep things normal. I'd joke with him like always, teasing him about his messy room or his endless job applications. He'd fire back, calling me the coolest mom ever, and we'd laugh, the air between us light. But there were moments, fleeting, unspoken, when the air grew heavy. A brush of his hand when he passed me the salt. A glance that lingered too long. I'd catch myself staring at him, memorizing the curve of his jaw, then shake my head, horrified. What was I doing? The sauna haunted me. I kept up my Saturday ritual, slipping into the cedar-scented heat, but now it felt different. Every creak of the house made my heart jump, half hoping, half dreading that Ethan would appear again. He didn't, but the memory of that day clung to me. The steam, his voice, the way his words had made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in years. I'd sit there, wrapped in my towel, and wonder what would have happened if I hadn't stood up, hadn't broken the moment. The thought thrilled me as much as it scared me. One evening, about a month after the sauna, things took another turn. David was asleep on the couch, a history documentary droning in the background. Ethan and I were in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner. I was washing dishes, and he was drying, our movements synchronized like a dance we'd done 1,000 times. The radio played softly, some pop song my clients loved. I hummed along, swaying slightly, and Ethan grinned. "You've still got moves, Mom," he said, nudging me with his elbow. I laughed, flicking soap suds at him. "Better than you, kid." He retaliated, splashing water back, and soon we were giggling like teenagers, the kitchen a mess. Then the song changed, something slower, soulful. Without thinking, I started swaying again, lost in the rhythm. Ethan set down his towel, watching me. "Dance with me," he said, his voice soft but firm. I froze, the sponge in my hand dripping into the sink. "What?" I asked, though I'd heard him perfectly. He stepped closer, holding out his hand. "Come on, just for fun." His eyes were warm, playful, but there was something else there, something that made my pulse quicken. I should have said no, should have laughed it off and gone back to the dishes. But instead, I dried my hands and took his. We moved slowly, awkwardly at first, my hand in his other hand light on my waist. The kitchen was dim, the only light coming from the pendant above the sink. The music wrapped around us, and I felt like I was 30 again, dancing with someone who saw me, really saw me. Ethan's grip was gentle but steady, and as we swayed, I could feel the warmth of his hand through my shirt. My heart pounded, and I told myself it was just the music, just the moment. "You're good at this," he murmured, his voice close to my ear. I laughed, trying to keep it light. "Years of practice," I said, but my voice was shaky. We kept dancing, the space between us shrinking. I could smell his cologne, faint but familiar, and it sent a shiver through me. His hand tightened slightly on my waist, and I felt a pull, like gravity drawing me closer. Our eyes met, and for a moment the world stopped. Then David coughed from the living room, a sharp, jarring sound. I pulled back, my face hot, muttering something about finishing the dishes. Ethan let go, his expression unreadable, and went back to drying plates like nothing had happened. But something had. I could feel it in the air, in the way my skin tingled where his hand had been. After that night, I couldn't pretend anymore. There was a line between us, one I'd always known was there, but now it felt blurry, like a chalk mark smudged by rain. I started seeking him out more, craving the moments when it was just us. I'd suggest late-night talks after David went to bed, or ask him to run errands with me, just to hear his voice. He never hesitated, always eager, always there. And every time that spark grew brighter. I started dressing differently too. Nothing drastic, but I'd choose tighter jeans, brighter tops, things I knew he'd notice. "Looking sharp, Mom," he'd say, and I'd beam, feeling like a girl with a crush. It was harmless, I told myself. Just a boost to my ego. But deep down I knew I was playing with fire. One Saturday I was in the sauna again, the heat of familiar comfort. I'd started locking the door, not because I didn't trust Ethan, but because I didn't trust myself. As I sat there, steam curling around me, I let my mind wander. I thought about the kitchen dance, about the sauna moment, about every glance and touch that had piled up like kindling. I wondered what he was thinking, whether he felt it too. The thought made my chest tight, a mix of guilt and longing I couldn't untangle. When I stepped out, towel wrapped tightly around me, Ethan was in the backyard, tossing a basketball at the old hoop David had put up years ago. He saw me and waved, his smile bright. "Good sauna," he called. I nodded, forcing a casual tone. "Always is." But as I walked back to the house, I felt his eyes on me, and I didn't turn around. Couldn't. That night, I lay awake next to David, my mind racing. I was a mother, a wife, a woman with a life I'd built over decades. But I was also someone else now, someone who felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. And it was Ethan who'd awakened that part of me. I didn't know what to do with it, didn't know how to stop it. All I knew was that I was standing on the edge of something dangerous, and I wasn't sure I wanted to step back. The next morning, Ethan suggested we go for a walk, just the two of us. "Like old times," he said, and I couldn't say no. As we strolled through the park, the autumn leaves crunching under our feet, I felt that pull again, stronger than ever. He talked about his plans, his dreams, and I listened, hanging on every word. When he reached for my hand to help me over a route, I didn't pull away. I let his fingers linger, and he didn't let go. What were we doing? Where was this leading? I didn't have answers, only a heart that wouldn't stop racing and a question I was too afraid to ask. What happens when you love someone in a way you're not supposed to?